title of my message is Out of Control. Out of Control. Now, how many of you in here would just confess that maybe at one time or another somebody has dared to suggest that you are a little bit of a control freak? Anybody in here besides myself, right? A few of you, and also some liars. How many of you are sitting next to somebody? You were like, "What? Are you serious right now? Why are you not raising a hand?" Right? And part of the reason is they don't want to raise a hand because of this very thing. They're like, "I'm not going to raise my hand just because you told me to raise my hand. Okay, you're not getting in control of my hands and what they do and what I do with them. I'm not going to be told what to do, bossed around and oppressed. Okay, I'm in charge. I'll raise my hand later in the middle of service for no reason. Okay, when I feel like doing it, not because you're asking for it. Okay." Because we have this, right? We like to be in control. We like to feel like we have the reins of our own life, of our own existence, that we're steering our story. And I'm not judging you because I'm this way. I'm a lot this way. I love to have a sense of that things are in their right place and things are working in a certain order. And I like to have things arranged a certain way. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm passing it along to my kids, especially my middle son. Or my middle child, my oldest son, Cohen, man, he's so particular about things. Like he likes to have things a certain way. If the food is not prepared the way that he likes it, the way his mom does it, if she leaves town, this kid's going to starve to death. He is just not going to, he knows it's not right? I didn't put the ketchup or the correct measurement in the mac and cheese. I don't know, it sounds weird. he's into weird stuff, you know what I mean? But he likes it a certain way. And in fact, we were on our way to soccer practice a little while back, and he's like, I could tell he's seething in the back seat. He's like, and he's grumbling. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, there's something wrong with these socks. These socks are not right. Somebody did something to the socks. Did you wash them different? Did you trade out the socks? What's going on? I'm like, there's no weird secret conspiracy to destroy your life through messing with your socks, man. Like, why is that something you're thinking about? And he's like, it's not right. And so he had to pop off his shoes and reorganize and line that little line at the toe of the sock, like right along the ridge, and get him on and like tied him. And was like, oh, that feels right. And then like all the way through the parking lot to the practice, he's walking like this. He doesn't want to mess. He doesn't want the sock to move. I'm like, that's not going to work in a game, buddy, but like continue on, right? He's particular, right? We like to be in control. We like to have things a certain way. And that's actually not a bad thing, right? It's a positive thing because, exercising control of what is in your control is actually a good thing. The issue comes, like, what happens when something spins out of control? Right? What happens when you've got a good system going, you kind of know it's predictable, and then something happens in your life that you weren't expecting? Like maybe you or your family or your community are forced to face something that you never thought you were going to have to face. And it's a lot. It's big, it's overwhelming, it's intimidating, it's nerve-wracking, and you don't know how to solve it because you're like, there is no playbook for this. Maybe for you, it's a bleak diagnosis from a doctor. For you or somebody that you love, maybe it was a loss of income and you're not really sure how you're going to pay your bills and take care of your family. Maybe you hit this place in your marriage that you thought, like, that'll never happen to us. We're in love. Right? This is the kind of thing that happens to other people, and now you're the other people because it's happening to you. Maybe you hit this place in your parenting where you're just like, we're not prepared for this. I don't know how to deal. We didn't even have problems in this category when I was a kid. I don't even know how to speak to this. Maybe there was a depression that snuck up into your life and you've been in denial, like because you don't even want to admit that how sad you are because of what happened. And you just feel like suddenly like I'm not in control anymore. Like this is out of control. And what do you do when you're facing that and the only solutions you can think of are things that also are beyond your control, right? Like when you think like, okay, what I would do, the ideal way to address this and to fix this and to solve this, in order to do that, I would need more money, okay, which I don't have. I would need some really stubborn people, I'm not going to say their names, to change their mind, okay? I would need new policies. I would need a whole lot of help. I don't even know where I would find it. And when you're stuck, if you're like me, you have this realization that it's so much easier to think of what other people could do or maybe what you would do if you had something more or different than it is to decide what you will do right now that might make any bit of real difference. Especially because, you and I, we don't want to just do anything, right? We want to do the best thing. We want to do something that matters, something that's important, something that's actually going to leave a legacy, that's going to leave an impact. And also, we have our limits, right? It's like, I will do anything to solve this issue. I mean, within reason. I mean, as long as it's within my time frame and my limited schedule, and it doesn't cost any money, and I don't have to change anything about my lifestyle, and I don't have to, basically, it's just like, can I just post something? I don't really want to do a thing, but I do want it to change, and I want you to know I'm open to suggestions as long as they're nothing. And so, right, and so how do we make a real difference, though? What is it that we might be missing? And I want to talk about this today by looking at this narrative from the Old Testament that really unravels somebody who finds themselves, and not just a person, but an entire community that finds themselves in a similar situation. And I think what God might be speaking to us and what we're going through and what we're facing through it. And it's in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1. And we're going to put on the screens as well so you can follow along. And I just want to read this to you and make a few observations that hopefully are helpful to where you're finding yourself today. It says this, it says, the king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman. He was the commander of his army because through him, the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Nathan was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. In other words, he had this incredible gift, this amazing thing that he could do, this thing that enabled him to achieve in a way that made other people admire him. But he also had this hurt hidden below the surface. You ever have somebody pay you a compliment like this? You are just incredible. You're awesome. I love you. You bring so much to the table. But, and you're like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. And that's essentially what we're being set up for in this scripture. When this guy was on a battlefield doing what he did best, he seemed invincible. But when he got home and the armor came off, there was weakness beneath. And here's the bottom line that I think this is really showing us, is that everybody's got a butt, and we all learn how to cover ours. Scripturally speaking, strictly, right? We all have things that we would rather other people not see or know about. And so we pull our strengths to the surface, these things that I'm great at, that I can do really well, that I'm on top of, that I'm in control of, that I can get admiration for. And I'm hoping that if I point to those things, that nobody will peer past them and be able to get a glimpse at the weakness below, at what I am hiding away underneath. My pain, my past, my fear, my anxiety, my insecurity, my shortcomings, the things below that are secretly spinning out of control. Because the reality of it is, everyone accumulates armor. This story is really not just about a warrior. This is about human nature. This is about me and you. And interestingly enough, though, in this particular story, what Naaman is covering up is leprosy. It's a disease that actually numbs out your pain sensors so that your body begins to deteriorate without even your awareness. In other words, this disease kills your ability to recognize that there's something wrong with you. And I wonder if that resonates with you. I wonder if you've ever gotten to a place in life where you kind of gotten you've gotten so good at ignoring a particular problem in your life that you've been able to convince even yourself that it's not really an issue, that it doesn't even exist. And I wonder this morning, what is your armor? What do you cover up with to hide what you don't want to deal with? And even if you go further into that, what deficiency are you hiding behind your competency? What is this for you? Some of you are like, different question. That one seems hard and uncomfortable. What else you got, right? Right? Because we all have these things, that thing that you don't even want to admit is an issue even to yourself. And for this particular person, it's leprosy. And it says in verse 2 that at this time, Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who'd been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. And one day the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. And so despite his attempts at hiding and even him being successful in certain arenas, some people knew what was going on. The people that were closest to him knew what he looked like without his armor on. And this same thing is true of you. Because the reality is, you can hide some of your stuff from someone, but you can't hide all of your stuff from everyone. And that thing, that deficiency, that character flaw that you have been pushing below, that you think that nobody sees, somebody sees. And in fact, this is what's so annoying about being a parent of small children. Your kids will sell you out, okay? They know, right? Like, no matter what you're posting on Facebook and Instagram, and no matter what you told people, and no matter like the censored version of the story that you told to your growth group, like, you ever had that moment where your kid is just like, hey, whoa, that's not the way it went down. No. You said the cuss words that we're not allowed to say, and then you had to put the dollars in the jar, and then you broke the jar because you were mad. And you just like, it was a lot. Like, whoa, what are you doing, Mom? Why are you eating a birthday cake? I thought you said you're giving up carbs for Lent and you're trying not to eat sugar because you said something about cottage cheese. You know what? Shut up, okay? That's fine. That's enough input out of you. No one asked you to come out here. Go look on kids' YouTube. Do something I told you not to do. Just get out of here. And yet you probably have these people in your life, right? Even if you don't have kids, that just sell you out in these moments. And I remember the first time I read this story, I thought, you have this servant girl who's essentially, she's a slave, and she knows what's really going on. And she kind of raises her hand, gets the courage one day to be like, hey, you need help. And this is where I would suggest that you go get it. And the first time I read it, I just thought, this is the end of the story, right? Like, we're going to move on to a different story as I'm reading my Bible because he's going to kill her. Like, there's no way he's going to listen to her, right? Because she's low status, right? Like, he has more of an education than her. He has more power than her, more authority than her. Like, why would he listen to her? It would have been so easy to brush her off. And I wonder in your own life, who are you tempted to ignore? Because they're younger, or they have less authority, they have less experience or expertise than you. And you're like, what do they know? But I think that sometimes God puts the help we most need in the place we're least willing to look. And sometimes we're begging God to give us an answer, and I believe that sometimes God is like, I already gave it to you. You're not paying attention. You think you're above it. You think you're too big for it. You think you're beyond it. And I wonder, like, what if your refusal to hear them is holding you back? Naaman's issue, in all reality, too, isn't just affecting him. It's affecting everything and everyone around him. And, because of who he was, this is a long list, because he is a general in an army that is currently at war. He has so much, capability or ability to do so much good. But if he didn't do what it took to get healthy, he wouldn't be able to help. He wouldn't be able to continue to fight for his people and causes he believed in and ultimately his community. And this is true of you. And sometimes we want an opportunity to change the world, but we don't want to start tiny with us. But that's how it works, because what God is able to accomplish through you is determined by what you allow him to address in you. It always starts with you. And I know that you want to love where you live. I know you want to make an impact. I know you want to make a difference. But often what's holding us back is this absence of humility that's necessary to accept the help you need to get healthy. And sometimes we reject that help or because of where it came from. Oh, I could hear it from anybody else. Not you, though. So you're like, who's sitting over there? That was just a vague point. That's not anybody, right? We just I don't want it coming from them. And yet, Naaman actually does pay attention. He does humble himself and listen in this moment. It says in verse 9, it says, so Naaman, he went with his horses and his chariots, and he waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and then your skin will be restored, and you will be healed of leprosy. So just, again, to give you some context of what's happening here, Naaman is one of the highest-ranking officials in the king's army and a favorite of the king because of what he's able to accomplish for the kingdom, right? His position was revered and respected. When he came around, people rolled out the red carpet. It was so much for him. Took so much humility just to ask for help to begin with. And then this prophet who supposedly can speak on behalf of God and supposedly has wisdom from God and supposedly has been able to work miracles through the power of God. This guy doesn't even come down to meet me face to face. Instead, he sends a low-level intern to come tell me that I should strip down naked in front of everyone, go down to a river that really isn't even a river, it is a sewage runoff system for low-class people, and I'm supposed to get naked and just dip in there, and then I'm going to be, is this some cruel, messed up joke? What is this? Is this you, like, I finally humble myself, and now you're mocking me? Is that what this is? Who do you think you are? Do you know who I am? Right? This is ridiculous, and he just finds himself just, like, fuming mad. It says in verse 11, Naaman became angry and stalked away. What a great usage of the word stalked, right? Just, you've seen a kid do it, right? Where they're kicking invisible rocks. You're like, what is happening? This is what Naaman is doing. Because he doesn't want to do it. Of course he doesn't. You wouldn't want to do it. But the reality of it is, the reason he doesn't want to do it isn't because it's hard, it's because it's humbling. And that's the one thing that he doesn't want, to embrace humility. And I think a lot of us end up here because the truth is real growth requires us to set aside our strengths in order to reveal and deal with our weaknesses. And I wonder if you were honest with yourself, what if the biggest thing holding you back is actually a small thing you're convinced you're too big to do? You know what? I don't need to go to counseling. I mean, I already know what they're going to say. And he's on my wife's team anyway. And so, like, I can't trust them, right? Like, it's not, and like, they're like, what teams? What are we talking about, right? Like, I don't need to join a recovery program, okay? Because I can tackle this on my own. I mean, it hasn't worked for the last 20 years, but, like, I'm convinced I'm going to be able to do, I don't need all those rules and steps and all that stuff. It's like, I don't buy into all that. I got my own thing that's going to work, even though it never has. I don't need to get in a growth group because I don't need a bunch of people knowing my business, okay? I don't need them knowing what's going on, and I don't want to be, like, fake with people. And that's what I think it's probably going to be, right? Like, I don't need coaching because I'm not the problem, okay? It's the people around me. It's them. It's not me, right? Like, I don't need to adapt this habit that's supposed to help me with my spiritual journey because, like, I got my own spirituality that I don't need to do, okay? Even though pretty much since the beginning of time, people were like, these are good ideas if you want to, like, tame your ego and, like, get rid of sin in your life and move in the right direction. Like, I'm above all that because, you know what? I'm a junior in high school, okay? And so I know things. And also, I tried that. I tried that before one time for 2 days in 2005, and it didn't work. And so it's a lie. It's all lies. And I think we play these same games with ourselves. This is what he says. He goes, Naaman says, I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. Like, when I showed up, I was as humble as I thought I could possibly be. And I had an idea of what was going to happen next. And he did not do that. And I want to do over. Because I think the essence of this is, like, I don't just want what I want it on my terms. Anybody else like that? Me either. I am not, I'm not opinionated at all. So here's what I find fascinating. In the New Testament, there's all these scenes where Jesus is meeting people on the side of the road, people who are desperate and in pain, going through a lot in their lives. And so many times in Scripture, he stops and asks them, what do you want me to do for you? Because Jesus genuinely cares and can and will help. You know what he never asked people as a follow-up question? How do you want me to do it? Because probably the way that Jesus needs to do it in order to get you to wake up and face it is going to be uncomfortable for you. I think sometimes, you and I, we miss out on a miracle because the setup looks too much like work we don't want to do. But the reality is you may have to give up your way in order to experience God's will. And I think some of us, we aren't open to or involved in what God is actually doing in the here and now because he's not doing it the way we think it ought to be done. And our stubbornness is in the way. Listen to what Naaman says. He says, I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy. Maybe he's got a wand and a top hat. I don't know how it works, okay? To wave his hand and call on the name of the Lord his God and heal me. I mean, aren't the rivers of Damascus and these other two locations better than any of the rivers in Israel? Like, why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? And so Naaman turned away and went away in a rage. You See, I think what we can gather from this, and even just looking at his description, Naaman doesn't really want a miracle. He wants a magic trick. He wants Elisha to wave his hands. He wants him to snap his fingers. He wants him to murmur some sort of a mantra, and he wants his problems to be fixed instantly. Naaman wants God to just instantly solve his problems, but God wants Naaman to be a part of his own solution. And Naaman wasn't the only one who needed for Naaman to get his problem solved, because everyone around him needed him to do it as well so he could continue to have an impact. But he was ready to walk. Naaman would rather go home and die and cease to be effective to anyone than humble himself and accept the spiritual prescription. And I can't help but wonder how many communities have suffered because of one person's pride. Because I don't want to submit to authority. I don't want to be a part of a team. I don't want to have to humble myself and do what was asked of me. I don't want to have to step up and serve in an area. Do you know my credentials and where I've been and the things I've done? Why would you even dare ask me to do that? Why would you even approach me? Do you know who I am? That type of arrogance is why so many wars begin. It's why so many organizations crumble. It's why so many churches divide. It's a sad thing. And Naaman is standing right in the middle of this moment. And all the people around him know what's at stake. They know that it's not just his healing, but the healing of so many other people. It says in verse 13, it says his officers tried to reason with him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? And so you should certainly obey him when he says simply, go and wash and be cured." Which is true, also a little bit of an oversimplification, right? You ever have friends and family, they're like, "Why don't you just do it? It's not that big a deal. It's just go wash a couple of times." And you're like, "Yeah, in a poop river." You omitted that detail. That's kind of a big one, okay? In front of everyone I know, naked, okay? I don't want to, why did you take out the details and make it seem simpler than it's complicated, okay? And it's I don't want to be out there. And you know what he's really saying? I don't want people to see me without my armor on. I don't want to be exposed. I don't want people to see my weakness. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want people to know. And yet, somewhere he's able to muster the humility to follow through and do this, to realize that it's not just about him, but his obedience affects more than just him. It says in verse 14, it says, so Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped. Now, is anybody that grew up in Sunday school having flashbacks to a little song from children's church? I just know where the church people are because they just laughed right now, okay? I'm just trying to suss them out. It was Naaman went down to the river to dip. Naaman went down to the river to dip. Naaman, and then it's and he dipped, 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 and I dip, and you dip, and we dip, 10 snip. Whatever that was the song. It was more fun than that when Sister LWYL did it, but definitely helped peg this story for me. In other words, he kept having to dip. He didn't go down once and was ta-da! It was blunk. Yeah, that's still, okay, yeah, that I look horrible. This is not working. I guess I'll keep trying. He says he dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. And what he did may have looked easy to everyone else, but I think it was probably the hardest thing he'd personally ever done. Swallowing his pride, submitting to spiritual authority, obeying this strict, seemingly nonsensical order, doing something that he felt was beneath him, having to put his weakness on display. But the reality of the story is his humility was the key to his healing. And the same is true for you. Because God meets tremendous needs through tiny acts of humility. This is how God moves. And we want, like Naaman, we want to do the big, impressive thing that we want to do that puts our strength on display. But God is no. If you actually want to make some progress, you're going to have to expose your weakness and let me heal you in my way. And it will not feel comfortable in the moment. But that's why it's really going to change you. and honestly, quite literally, Naaman's willingness to bathe naked in a sewage river in front of a live audience was the key military breakthrough for his entire country, right? And not because it was a brilliant strategy, but because it required his humility. Because once he got healed, he was able to go fight for the healing of his nation and his community. Him being free meant he could go set other people free. Things that don't seem as connected to us are clearly connected to God. And when we're like, what does that have to do with this? And God's like, everything. And when we humble ourselves and we honor God, He grants us a breakthrough. And the breakthrough that He's going to give you, it's not just for you, it's for everyone around you. Don't talk your way out of transformation. Because the question isn't, why can't I do it another way? It's, what is God asking me to do? That's the question. What is God asking me to do? And this is usually where we push back. The thing He asked me to do is dumb. I don't want to do that thing. I just, it's not even that big a deal. I don't know. I can't be sure if it's God, because I think God would want to use more of the things I'm awesome at. And so but this thing is not even really playing to my strengths. And so also no one's going to take a picture of that, put on Facebook. So it's probably not, God wouldn't want me to be uncomfortable or stretch me, And so it's probably not, I don't know. And it's not even going to matter, right? And it's out of my comfort zone. It's not my personality type. This is not according to any of the tests I took. It's not my Enneagram number, okay? It's not any of that stuff. It doesn't fit into the thing, right? And and here's the thing. I'll do better than that thing. I'll do something even harder. I'll do something even better. But God doesn't want you to make this other sacrifice. He wants your obedience right here, in this moment, with this thing that He's asked you to do, because He knows that's the linchpin to what it is you're hiding and running from. That's the linchpin to your healing. They're excuses. It's your ego trying to defend itself, and it's in the way. And I get it. Maybe you're okay, well, what do I do? Because I don't know a lot of eccentric prophets that I could go to for hey, what's my next step? And after this story, I don't want to know those people. They have weird ideas, okay? But don't do nothing. And in looking at all of this in the context of Scripture, what I would tell you is that if you are looking to change the world, or even just change your life, start where you are. Use what you have and do what you can. And ultimately, this story seems really otherworldly because it's from a time and a different place. But in all reality, this is all He's doing. He's starting where He's at, right? The voice that He needed to hear was in His own home. And then He used what He had. He had this advice. He had the ability to go and approach this person, and He just did what He can. And once He took the first step, then God revealed the next step, and then God revealed the next step, and the next step. And sometimes we're okay, God, I might follow your plan, but I need to know all the steps. And God is well, why don't you do the one I gave you? Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. Because the truth is, just like Naaman, chances are God has already spoken to you through the people and opportunities and spiritual leaders around you. You probably just didn't like what He had to say. I would wager that if you are stuck in your life right now and you are waiting for God to give you guidance, it's probably not that you don't know what to do. It's that you don't want to do it. And not necessarily because it's hard, but because it's humbling. It's a sacrifice you don't want to make. But I would tell you that something even bigger than you is at stake. And I know part of you wonders, okay, I say I do that one thing and I get another step, and that's fine, but that doesn't really solve the whole problem. Just because I do this thing, how does that address this whole big thing out there? And it doesn't in a very direct way, at least not right away, and you would be right about that. Just because Naaman found healing for himself didn't mean that the war that his country was in, it was immediately over. He didn't come up and the leprosy's gone and the war's over, right? That's not what happened. There were still bigger issues on the horizon. But what it did mean was now Naaman was better equipped to fight that war. And healing in a community always begins with a handful of people humble enough to start tiny, with a handful of people willing to start with themselves. Willing to take one humble, obedient step after the next. And I will tell you that We resisted at first, but the truth is that no one regrets a small sacrifice on the other side of a big breakthrough. And I know that sounds insulting because what God is asking you to do right now, or at least the thing you think He's asking you to do, feels like a really big thing. But I would tell you that as big as it feels right now, it is small in the scheme of things. God would never ask you to make a sacrifice that feels big for you if it wasn't going to relate to like a bigger breakthrough that stretched way beyond you. And this is why I like talking about this on our birthday, because, like Pastor Moses said, 21 years ago, the reason why we're all here is because two young kids, and when I look at them in this picture, they look younger than me. That's why I call them kids. I brought a photo. This is original South Hills, you guys. Pastor Chris and Laura right here. And I'll tell you, they made a huge sacrifice. I've heard him tell this story many times. They had this thing of I think this is what God is calling us to do, to build a different kind of church that explains and the gospel in a different way than maybe exists currently in this community. And they were let's go all in. And so they drained their savings account and they pushed all the money forward and invested it into starting a church. And they gathered their family and friends and they went for it. They moved because they didn't have money to have their own spot, their own place, moved in with their parents. Right? As grown people. I mean, they look young, but not live with your parents young. You know what I mean? That's a sacrifice, right? That's a sacrifice. And some of you are well, that's not small. That's a big thing. And it was a big thing. But I would tell you this, the discomfort they had to go through in that moment, if you were to ask them after this service if they felt like that season was worth it, they would never take it back. Because they did that, you are here. Because of their willingness to be humble, because of their willingness to walk the path in front of them, look at all the life change. Every time I watch a video, every time I see a baptism, every time we celebrate a campus launch, every time we see something that has happened overseas because of Beyond Our Walls, I just think man, the sacrifice that two people made to say, I don't even know if this is going to work, but we're going to do it, we're going to be obedient. We're going to take the humble next step. Yeah, I'm going to have to tell people in line at the grocery store, yeah, I live with my mom, so things are going great for us, And the reason why I love this picture, one, for just the outfits. The outfits are next level. Can we just talk about Laura's bangs? They're just next level. But more than that, I love the facial expressions. You want to know what it looks like when you are following God to do uncomfortable things that are going to change the world? You think it's when people take a first step of something that's going to change the world, we always think that they're going to be this is so amazing, just me and Jesus, living the dream, right? It's no, it's this expression that Laura has in her face of yeah, we're out there, we did it. I don't know if it's working, I don't know. It's I imagine Naaman having this look on his face that Pastor Chris has of I'm 3 dips in, am I supposed to feel something? Are we supposed to see some breakthrough? What's happening? Nothing's happening. I still have it. The sores are there. When is the life change? When are all the things going to happen? When are the big testimonies and the stories and the crowd of people cheering and all that? When is that coming? Sometimes, a lot of times it takes a long time. It takes consistency. 7 dips is a lot when you don't even want to do one. And yet, your life and my life is better because they did. And not just them, but so many that went before each and every one of us. And now it's our turn to pay it forward to somebody else. I just wonder, what if you stopped hiding behind the armor that you have accumulated and embraced humility to help heal your community? What if you decided that you were going to allow God to take you out of your comfort zone, that you were going to be obedient to Him, and that you are going to sacrifice something that feels so big to you right now because of the breakthrough you're convinced God is going to use it for on the other side. And not just a breakthrough in you, but a breakthrough for everyone around you. And this is true of every amazing story that exists here. It's a lot of people taking a lot of little steps and allowing God to stretch them so that you could be reached, so that your neighbors could be reached, so that your kids, like my kids, get to grow up in a church to where they don't have to unlearn everything when they become an adult. This last week, we did a bunch of LWYL projects. And like just hearing story after story, Pastor Jeremiah has been coordinating a lot of this, and I have been talking every day and looking at pictures and talking about what's happened and people's experiences. And I'll just tell you, almost everyone who signs up, like they're looking forward to it, and they get there and they're immediately nervous, right? Because it's like, I've never done, I don't know, this is a little bit out of my comfort zone. And there was a team this last week that went and did a very tiny thing, right? They started very tiny. They signed up and they went to a local coffee shop, and they just paid for people's drinks for like a couple hours, right? They just sat at a table, and just when the person came up, they were like, the barista was like, hey, you've already been taken care of. South Hills Church is sitting over there if you want to say hi. And the nervousness of like, oh, what are people going to say? What if they ask me like a weird theological question? What if I get put in a corner? I don't know what to do, right? And it's nerve-wracking, right? And you wonder, like, is this even making a difference? Like, what does buying coffee really do for people? And there's this photo that Pastor Jeremiah sent to me that I think describes why. And it's this picture of a woman who, after she found out her coffee was paid for, walked over to the people who started tiny and sacrificed of their time and energy to go do something small for people. And she just broke down. She was like, man, if you knew how hard my week was and all the things that are going on in my life right now, if you knew like how bad I needed to feel like the whole world isn't against me and that there are people who care and that I'm loved and seen, like if you just knew a little bit, man, you would know how big a deal this is to me. You know, all those people who were so nervous to go said right afterwards, Jeremiah was like, they were like, can we do this? This was awesome. I feel so great. We're doing it. We're changing life. I need to do this every week. And I'm like, lock them in, get it on camera. Now they're doing it everywhere. No, we didn't make them, but like, that's the thing. You have no idea the ripple effect that takes place when you're willing to swallow your pride, have a little humility, and follow God into a small sacrifice that's going to lead to a big breakthrough. And when you're serving somebody else to help them get their breakthrough, what you discover on the other side is that, wow, while I got my eyes off myself and served them, I got my breakthrough too. That's what I want to pray into your life today. Whatever God is challenging you to do, maybe it has to do with serving or giving or forgiving. I don't know what it is, but you do. I wonder if you gave God all access to your life and just said, like, you get to point to the weakness and the pain and the fear underneath the armor. I'm going to give it to you. I want to pray that for you today. Would you bow your heads across this room? And before I pray for all of us, I want to pray for a few of you specifically. What we believe here at South Hills is that, one of the greatest little tiny starts that you can make is choosing to say yes to Jesus. And sometimes we make it more complicated than it is, and really it is this. It simply means to say, like, God, I liked being in control of my life, but like I've been shown again and again, I'm not ultimately in control of reality. You are. God, you know me better than I know me. You love me unconditionally. God, I want to surrender to your will and to your way. God, you take charge. You take control of my existence and you lead me. And if you're in a place today where you have not taken that first tiny little step that changes everything about how you orient your life, about how you live and experience today, and about even your eternity, we want to invite you to do that on our 21st birthday, to invite you to surrender to Jesus in a way that transforms everything, because that's why this church exists. And if that's you this morning and you're like, yeah, I think I'm ready to do that, I'm going to ask you to be bold, and while nobody's looking around except for me, would you just slip your hand up and just say, yeah, I want to say yes today. I need to make a change today. Awesome. See hands going up around the room. I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to pray for all of us. And then we're going to give you some instructions on what to do next, because this is a big deal. God, I'm grateful for your love and for your grace and for your mercy. And I am grateful that you embrace and accept us no matter what. God, thank you for the rescue mission that you sent to each of us through South Hills Church. And God, we are here today because others sacrificed, because others humbled themselves and followed after you. And God, we are the fruit, we're the results. And God has transformed us. And God, I pray that today, if we're in this place and in the quiet of our own heart, we're like, God, you gotta take over, you gotta take control. That God, as we open our heart to you, that you would flood in, that you would cleanse us, God, that you would make it to where as we move forward in life, that our story is no longer controlled or dictated by our sin or our guilt or our shame, that God, we experience today a sense of freedom. And as we've taken this first step, God, may you illuminate the next and the next and the next. God, I pray for the rest of us in this room who maybe we took that first tiny step so long ago, but we're in a place where we feel stuck or jammed up on the journey, or we feel like we've known it all, or we feel like we've matured past needing to rely on you on a day-to-day basis. God, I pray that you would illuminate to us what it is you would have us do next. God, that we would walk in humility, submitted to you, and God, one foot in front of the other. God, we would follow after you, and you would lead us to a place of true transformation, not just for ourselves, but for those who are connected to us. And God, as we love where we live, God, may you give your message, the gospel message. God, may we see it extend in ways we could have never dreamed, because we were willing to start right here, right now with us. In Jesus' name.